Okay, we're good. We're live.
All right. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see your faces. Actually, I can really see the faces because we have I think there's only 9 people on video today. And so the faces are really big on my screen. I'll try not to pick on Scotty today. Anyway, so we're going to continue on. I think today is the last day that we're going to be in the book of Philippians. Depending on how the conversation goes, I have a lot of notes, so it might mean we split it in half. But so I'm going to split the reading in half. The verses are from the last chapter of Paul's letter to the church in Philippi, and it's verses 4 through 9 are the ones I'm going to go with. However, I'm going to probably just read the first few right now. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in the Anointed One. So this is Paul's bringing his letter to a close, and he is kind of wrapping up all the things that we've been talking about into this last chapter. And he says, be anxious for nothing. And the question I wanted to actually start with today, what worries you the most? If you feel comfortable, I would love to hear what is worrying you the most in your life right now. And I will grab Scotty. Go, Scotty.
I thought this is a very, very powerful saying for me today because, you know, I don't really look at my emails very often. I looked at it and it said, you need to go in and sign this document for non-coverage for your homeowners. Well, I almost had a cardiac arrest right here on the spot. And so now I've got to call in to the agent to see what's going on. But I thought, boy, this is true. Do not be anxious. Just put it out there. It's going to work out.
Okay, so right now it's your homeowner's insurance. Okay. Anyone else? What worries you the most? Dennis, you're muted and I can't get you for some reason. Yeah.
My health has not been the best here lately, and as y'all know, I've always been independent. And I'm just afraid, in fact, here lately I've had to depend on Rob for everything. And I'm used to be the one that everybody goes to. Now I'm having to go to others for help.
Okay. So a little bit of anxiousness about losing independence and your health. Okay. Anyone else? What worries you the most? Stuart?
Lack of purpose.
Lack of purpose. Ooh, okay. Anyone else? And Clemence, what is worrying you the most? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was actually moving my camera. Lots of things. I think it's safety. Safety in the general sense, physical and safety in society, safety in the job, everything that is related to safety.
Okay. Anyone else? What worries you the most? Oh, Shirley. Gotcha.
I'm going to go with what Clement said about safety, but it's more than that. It's the unrest that we're feeling today. There's so much of it that I'm not sure where it's going to go in the future.
Yes, very much so. I mean, it was funny, Scotty said this was pertinent. When I was preparing this, I had no clue that last night we were going to have riots in Atlanta, which goes to the safety, which goes to that whole, the unrest. So this is kind of a timely conversation, and I'm not quite sure where it's going to go today. So it'll be interesting to see. But anyone else want to chime in? Carrie, let me see if I can unmute you. Some people I have trouble unmuting. You're one of them. It's a sign from God.
Whatever. So I guess what worries me the most, I mean, first, where do I start? But I guess one of the major things is Nick's safety.
Okay.
You know, I've shared some things with you, and it's just that you know how people are,
Yeah. No, that's
and that and not just that, but just in general his safety. You know, I was like this with Colton, and I guess now with Nick, I'm even more so because of Colton. So Nick's safety and just his overall well-being is my concern.
filtering the future through the past, sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else? Well, I made a list. My list did not include riots and unrest. Like I said, when I was writing my notes, I wrote things like money, the mortgage, the car payment, the credit card debt, student loans, paying bills, making your first million, or stretching the dollar you have. Okay. Security, finding a job, keeping your job in this world of downsizing and furloughs, getting the next promotion, or maybe just a pay raise, making your boss happy with your work, or building a successful business. Do you fear failure? Love and family, finding that special person in my life, that soulmate, losing that one that you thought loved you, keeping your kids safe from themselves and from others, reconciling with your family, or just keeping the peace. Acceptance from your friends, accepting yourself. And then emotions, getting past depression or some heavy sadness or feeling lack of purpose, fear of anxiety, anger, even hatred or loneliness. I think that was all I could think of. Did I forget anything? I mean, there's a lot of, oh, Rory, go ahead. Oh, wait, I'll unmute you. Rory, I can't unmute you. Rory?
Yeah, I had to find me first. Okay. No, this is actually, I just wanted to throw this in because it's from Wendy. Fear for the next generation is what she put. Just wanted to put that in there. Came over, that's on Facebook Live.
Okay. And that's right in line with the unrest and the uprisings. My brother called me last night at, gosh, I don't know what time it was. But Rory had already gone to bed because he was concerned. He had seen on the news everything that was going on. You know, Paul in this passage says, don't worry about it. Let me reread that again. Be anxious. Don't be anxious about anything. Now, if he stopped there, I would probably say, yeah, like Carrie always says to me when I tease her, whatever, because I don't think it's possible to stop the sentence there. Don't be anxious about anything. That's like, well, when Jesus says, if you see somebody, or no, James, the brother of Jesus, says, if you see somebody who's in need and you don't fill that need, then your words are worthless. Don't say, oh, be warm, be fed, and bye. God bless you. I'm praying. That to me, if you ended the sentence there, that's exactly, it would be meaningless words. Paul goes on and he gives us some advice on how to not be anxious for anything. And the first thing that he puts out there is in prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your request be made known to God, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in the anointed. Actually, I want to continue on. He says, oh, I lost it. I must have deleted it by accident. But he says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. I need to go back to Philippians, but he talks about that God is closer than we think. And that it's the idea of focusing on the presence of God in our life is what it starts. Make your requests known to God. He's closer than you realize. how do you practice the presence of God in your life? And we sit. Oh, I think Philip wants to say something. For some reason, I'm having trouble unmuting people again, so just unmute yourself when I say your name. Philip.
Okay, did you get me?
I got you now.
I think that one of the things would be the testimony that you give to others around you during your daily interactions.
Okay. The way talking about your faith. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Clemence. Unmute.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So I'm more a spiritual person per se. I grew up as a Christian, but I'm not specific to one name. But I believe that the everyday being centered with my life mission or the goal, and to recenter that mission every day and to start the day this way by practice, and to trust that this mission is going to carry out through the day is the way to stay closer to God, because we are her creation. And so to stay centered on our mission or our goal is for me the way to stay connected.
So we've got Philip with intentional conversation. We have Clemence with intentional focus. Anyone else? I don't see any hands. Lisa, you're smiling. Did you want to say something?
Okay. I was just thinking of looking around me and just seeing God, not only through circumstances in my life, but also just physically around me. And, yesterday I had just this euphoric feeling when I was walking in Stone Mountain Park, just the blue skies, they were so blue, and just thinking how in the midst of chaos, there's this gentle beauty in nature, and nature doesn't really worry, I guess. It's like, consider the lilies of the field, his eyes on the sparrow. I mean, those passages in scripture that just remind me there's something greater than me.
Okay. And then back to focus. And that's really what we're talking about today a little bit, is how we, and I'm going to pick on Carrie a little bit. Carrie brought a great example when she said she worries about Nick's safety. And the reason she's worried about Nick's safety is not necessarily everything that's going on in Nick's life right now, but it's the history that she had with Colton. And so she's filtering the way she looks at Nick through the past, which isn't necessarily, we learn from the past. But if we use the past if we only use the past to see the future, then it can put anxiety on what we're seeing. Scotty got an email, I think is what she said, from her insurance, or from somebody saying, hey, wait a minute, you're not in compliance. And now she knows she is with her insurance, so she's got to call and straighten this out. Well, if she can project into that conversation before she even has that conversation, anxiety, and build what, if you will, bridges before she even needs the bridge. And many times, a lot of the things that we worry about never really happen. There was a study done by Dr. Walter Cavert, and he did studies on worry. And I've referenced this before, and I actually this time found it so I could give you the percentages that he actually had. 40% of the things that we worry about never happen. 30% of our worries concern the past. 12% of our worries are needless worries about our health. 10% of our worries are basically insignificant or are petty concerns. Things like, oh, does this dress make me look dress? Does this shirt make me look fat? Or, those kind of things. 8% of what we worry about are really legitimate concerns. Only 8%. And Paul says, don't even worry about those things. Let your request be known. And what I was looking for was right at the first. It's in verse 5. It says, let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. And so now we're to that intentional focus, that choosing to realize that God presence is here, right now, whether it be in the beauty of the sky, whether it be in the focus of the mission that we have or the conversations that we have. I like the way the Mirror says it. It says, show perfect courtesy to all people. The Lord is not nearer to some than he is to others. The Greek behind, he felt that the Greek behind this long study note on this, why he translated it that way, is the idea that it's a all-inclusive at hand and presence. So he translates it that instead of just the Lord is near, the Lord's not closer to some than he is to others. So be reasonable, be courteous toward all other people. The idea of practicing the presence of God in my life is not just an inward focus. It's an inclusive focus. And honestly, Shirley, to speak to your worry, I believe that that's why we have so much unrest in the world, is because we have fallen into the lie of other. There is no other. Now, it's hard for me to talk about this because I'm a privileged white male, and I didn't really realize that in my life, but I'm starting to realize how doors have been opened just because of who I am. Even though I'm a gay man and suffered discrimination and hatred in other ways, there are other ways that I can hide that. And so I moved ahead in my job and who knows? Yes, I have skills, and I'm sure that a lot of things were skills, but I'm sure I have privilege that I don't realize. And you may disagree with me on that. But in my mind, I just don't see it. Not the privilege. I don't see why there's a difference. I don't understand this. I never have understood this. But there is no other. And I believe that Paul is saying to reduce the worry in our lives, we have to realize that God is just as much with Scotty as God is with me. God is just as much with, I see Aloma's name, is just as much with Aloma as God is with me. God is just as much with Clemence is with me. Regardless of their religious leanings or their philosophies. Did you want to say something, Philip?
Well, I just have a question.
Yeah.
You talked about the lie of other. Are you talking about Satan and his hand in this, or I'm just a little bit confused on that?
The idea, I'm talking about the idea that you are different than me. Physically, yes. On the outside, we may have variations. Some of our variations we were talking about before we got online today, we were talking about Clemence's still shot when her camera goes off. She looks like a supermodel, because this group of people decided that was something that was pleasing to the eye. Whereas my still shot, I don't even know if I have a still shot, may not be pleasing to the eye. So there's that consensus, but that's a physical otherness. I'm talking about the fact that I am connected to you. What I do what I do to myself, I do to you. What I do to you, I do to myself. And that we are all connected in God. And so the lie of other is the thinking that what I do to you doesn't affect anyone but you. What I do to myself doesn't affect anyone but me. That to me is the lie of other. That's the lie of division and separation. And God, the purpose of God is to reconcile. It says in the scriptures that God wants to reconcile all things back into himself, back into unity, back into oneness. And we talk about it different, whether you go with Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, we talk about unifying, coming together as one, feeling a one with the universe, feeling one with God. We know subconsciously we are driven towards unity. But consciously, we've chosen division. We've chosen other. We've chosen to define others by judgment. I have become the judge and jury of what is right and wrong. This group decided that Clemence was pretty, and let's say this group decided that Clemence is pretty and I'm ugly. Bull. I'm all that in a bag of chips, people, whether you see it or not. But but we, in doing that, if I say, oh, Clemence is pretty and oh, Lisa needs to do something about her hair. Yeah, thank you. I have made myself a judge because I've made myself the center of the universe by saying what I think is right and what I think is wrong is wrong. And then I'm basically practicing, if you will, idolatry because I have become God instead of allowing God to be God. Was that a good rabbit trail explanation? So practicing the presence of God is an intentional focus. Practicing, but it has to do with the other. I was thinking of this story I heard once about this woman. Her husband was looking for something in the closet. I don't remember exactly what he was looking for, but he found the shoebox up in the cupboard, and it had 2 doilies in it and a wad of cash. And so he was like, well, what is this? And he brings the box into the kitchen and he says to his wife, who feels a little uncomfortable with his discovery, because there were hundreds of dollars in this shoebox. And he said, what is this box? And she said, well, we've been married now for 40 years. And during that time, I just decided that every time you did something that annoyed me or made me angry, rather than lashing out at you, I just allowed you to be who you are, and I would crochet a doily. And the husband was touched. He's like, oh my gosh, 40 years of marriage, and there's only 2 doilies. I must be pretty good husband. And then he thought to himself, he goes, well, but what's all this money? She goes, well, the box got so full, I had to sell the doilies. But the wife,
that's good.
The wife made an intentional choice to allow her husband to be who he was. Now, I'm sure they had disagreements. I'm sure they had conversations, but I like the idea of sitting back and just allowing. You know, Rory, I'm going to use Rory as an example. Sorry. Rory used to have this habit of, as soon as he hit the front door of the house, he would undress all the way through the house, and his clothes just landed wherever they landed. There'd be a pair of pants over the dining room chair. There'd be socks in the kitchen, whatever. And that used to annoy the crap out of me. I would basically follow him around the house, picking up his clothes and griping at him. about messiness. It wasn't until I stopped. It was very interesting. I stopped. I said, you know what? Fine. If you want to leave clothes around the house, leave clothes around the house. And then he stopped.
You really should have made doilies each time, because we'd be rich right now.
Oh. But I let Rory be Rory. I'll be right there, Scotty. I let Rory be Rory and grow into himself. And you know what? I did things. I don't know what, because he never told me. But I know that I did things in the beginning of our relationship that were challenging for him. And he just let it go. So I really did learn that lesson from Rory, is just allowing each other to grow within ourselves to who we were meant to be. An example of that is, it's not an annoying story, but when I had much anxiety and worry about becoming Pastor Jeff again, because I'd walked away from everything. And when I told Rory about it, I was concerned that it would, he didn't sign up to be a pastor's wife. Pastor's husband. And he said to me, I knew that when I met you. I was just waiting for you to realize it. Allowing the other to be other. Scotty, I'm unmuting you. Oh, no, you're good.
Okay. When you talked about this story, what it reminded me of is one time when I was in community, I would get so upset because everybody would leave all their SHIT all over the house. I said, I don't care what your bedrooms look like. That's your stuff. But if the common area, I want it to look clean. So I would pick up everything. I'd put it on the dining room table and say, okay, this is yours. This is yours. Please take it. And finally, what happens when you live with a therapist? She said, this is really your problem. It's not a problem for anybody else. And it stopped being a problem for me then. It's like, oh, well, yeah, it is my problem. And if I chose to clean up the place, I chose to clean it up. And I had to remind myself that it was a choice as opposed to getting pissed at the other people because they didn't pick up things.
Exactly. I love that. Rory.
Well, I think one of the biggest problems is communication and accepting diversity. People always want other people to be like them or to agree with them. And, I think diversity is a very, very important thing, and it creates balance, but also communication. There's been, lots of times where people have grown up always being told that one certain group of people are bad. So they hate that group of people. And then one day they meet one of those people, and all of a sudden it's like, you know what, you're not so bad. And I think that it's a lot of it's more human, I think. Yeah, unfortunately more human than it is God. And I don't think we bring God in our lives enough to be able to balance this. But, most hatred, most wars, most division is all learned. It's all been taught by somebody else because, otherwise, that it just wouldn't be there. And so I think maybe in this process that we're seeing, maybe with God's help, we can do some unlearning.
And here's my question. Here's the question that kind of follows that is, what keeps us from acknowledging the presence of God, from acknowledging the fact that there is no other? Because I think those go hand in hand. What keeps us from that? And Rory's given the answer. One of the answers is lack of understanding, education, conversation. So what keeps us from others is ignorance. So I'm going to make this a God thing for a second. I remember I talked about walking away from church, religion, faith, everything. I was done. I was done with all of the bull that I was dealing with as a pastor in the Baptist church that I was in. And I assumed, because of what I had been taught, that God hated me, and I was done. Because you know what? Screw you, God. You hate me, I hate you. Bye. And I walked away from all of that because I believed the lie that I had been taught, that God hated me because of who I was. And it was I was so angry. And I refused to acknowledge God in my life, in my conversation. I was probably the most, well, you know, they say the most obnoxious non-smoker is someone who quit. The most obnoxious non-faith person is the one who quit. And I was done with it. And I would lash out in conversations at people about how ignorant they were, because I knew my Bible. I was raised inundated with it. And I didn't realize what I was learning at that point. But looking back, in my conversations with others, lashing back out at them with the same Bible that they were lashing at me with, I realized that you can pretty much twist it to say exactly what you want it to say if you're not faithful to context. There's ways around that, but we don't listen to those things because we're too busy trying to make it say what we want it to say all the time. And that opened my eyes, and that's started to bring me back. But my first conversation with God, when I decided that I did need some sort of a faith basis in my life, and there was a lot of circumstances that surrounded that, was, okay, God, I know you hate me, and you're going to send me to hell when I die. Fine. I get it. You know, at least you could be some of that merciful stuff that you talk about in the Bible and give me some sort of a life. You know, how about you give me a friend that I can talk to that thinks like I think? And that was my request. Shortly after that, I was taken to the church where I met Rory, and I got a lot more than a friend. I got a purpose, a direction, a joy, a peace that passes all understanding. It hasn't been that way all my life. I mean, since meeting Rory, because, you know, Rory does bring a lot of turmoil into my life. I need your prayers. But it has been this journey towards the amazing. You know, one of my core beliefs, which I still hang on to, is the best is yet to come. And that's what it's been for the last, what is it, Rory, 20 years now? 30 years. Oh, Lord, I'm so old. But for 30 years, it's been this journey towards the amazing. And it's not done yet. I kind of rabbit trailed there because really so it's the conversation with God was a starting point, but I believe that the conversation with others is also a part of this. And that is the idea of, we have some friends who the wife is was a pastor's wife. She's no longer married to that pastor and everything, but from a very similar background teaching that I was brought up in. And her son, we didn't even know this until we met him, but he is gay. And we've known these people for a few years, and we were at a party, and her son came up to Rory and said, "Thank you. Your friendship with my parents has created an acceptance that I've never had before." So sometimes the conversation, you don't even realize you're having that conversation by living your best self with others. So is there anything else that keeps you from acknowledging God and other? besides conversation and ignorance? Actually, Lisa. Okay.
Pride, to be honest, because you don't necessarily want to, be humble or have a spirit of humility. I know that I've thought that, what I wanted was more important than what God wanted for me, or just meeting people along the way that are, quite frankly, so intelligent that they kind of consider themselves like a supreme being, and therefore they don't want to acknowledge that there's actually someone even smarter than you. And I think pride is a really big obstacle in a lot of cases.
Okay, pride. Rory.
I would definitely have to say ignorance. Just not knowing the truth. And, like I said, so many wars were started just because people believed somebody else and never really researched for themselves. And, so I would definitely say ignorance.
Okay. I like pride. I like ignorance. I like, really, could we sum it up maybe with selfishness, in the sense that we think that we are the center of the universe when we're not? Paul goes on to say, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Whatever it is, I'm making a note here, whatever it is, don't worry about it. Let God handle it. Put it out there and be done with it. So worry is kind of like assuming responsibility for things that we're never to take responsibility for. So it's playing God. But the piece there that I want to hone in on is with thanksgiving. Y'all know I love affirmations. I'm always looking at things that are uplifting and basically being transformed by the renewing of my mind. There's a DVD out there that Rory and I have, and I've loaned it to people, called The Secret. It's about putting out to the universe the positive energy and expecting that positive to come back to you. And that's one way of putting it. There's other ways of claiming. I mean, in Christianity, we claim things in the name of Jesus. It's the same concept of saying, you know what, I claim this and I know it's going to happen. It's the same idea as putting it out there saying, I want this to happen, and believing that it will happen. But a key of that, one of the people that I saw, and his name escapes me right now, the key for me is gratitude. Making your request known with gratitude. Because it is that gratitude that elevates the request into a positive. There's a request. Why me? Why can't you take this from me? That's a request, but to me, it is not a request in gratitude. It's a request of basically putting out the negative. You're going to get negative back. You always get what you're looking for. I don't know if I'm making sense on this. Has anyone else had experience with this idea of making requests with gratitude? And do you have examples of where it happened or how it happened in your life? Or am I just talking philosophically and no one's ever experienced the idea of answered prayer or answered requests with gratitude? Oh, Clemence.
Well, about now it's been 9 years ago. It was really 9 years ago. Was introduced to me the idea that if I wanted to find the person the man that will be my boyfriend and maybe husband or a long relationship, I should look for.
Have you found him yet? No.
I don't know.
I'm just the background screen.
But at the time, I was said, yeah, you have to have your best friend. And that person told me, just make a list of who you want this person to be, like, you know, like traits and maybe confidence in certain parts or whatever. And I did that, and I put it out in the universe with gratitude. And within a month, I met Josh. And to articulate the idea, actually, I was listening to a meditation professional, whatever, this morning, and she was talking about gratitude. And she said gratitude and what you want to see appear in your life. It's like you're in a garden and you're focusing, you have your hose in your hand, you're watering whatever is in your garden, and you're focusing on the flowers because they're beautiful. And the hose is going to go in that direction because that's where your focus is. But it's suddenly you're like focusing and it's going to grow. And if you're focusing on the bad plants and I don't know, the weeds and all that, then it's like on the road, you're going to turn the wheel, you're going to turn yourself towards the weed, and that's what's going to grow. So that's why she was saying gratitude is so important. Gratitude work is because it brings our focus, even though it's the minute things, to what's positive. Because as says Eckhart Tolle, if I hope everybody knows him, I don't remember the name of his book. I think it's anyway, I'll find it. Eckhart Tolle, is that how you say his name? He says there's nothing else but the present. The past is the past, and the future that hasn't happened yet. So when we worry, we're worried, as you said at the very beginning, we don't have anything to worry for. But our actions and thoughts in the present are what's the most important. So we have to water those flowers. So you can have a guy like this at some point 8 years later. Well, sometimes I wish my list would have been a little bit longer. I forgot a few things. But other than that, it was at the time, for a couple of months after met him, Josh, it was like floating on, it's like the entire universe opened itself. It was very powerful.
You know, you can, those things that you need, you can add that to your next list for your next one.
Yes.
Kidding. Anyone else? Do you have an example of that in your life? Mine is not quite as intentional, because this is before I really realized that what you put out comes back. I was just in the beginning stages of learning this idea of making your requests known with gratitude in your heart. Roy and I, when we lived over on the other side of the mountain, we had this huge rear projection television. You guys remember those things? But it was huge. I mean, it filled the whole wall almost. And it was almost as, well, no, it wasn't quite as wide as it was tall, but it was starting to go, because we'd had it for a few years, and it had a purple line across the bottom. And although purple's my favorite color, not real fond of it in my television screen. So we were talking about, because we were really kind of financially struggling to be, you know, we hadn't, anyway. So we were like, okay, so we don't really want to put out the money for a new TV. And this is when the beginning, when plasma TVs were the big thing, you know. And so we were talking about, we had these projectors from when we owned the meeting planning and event management company. We can mount a projector up on the ceiling and put a screen over there. And we had all these ideas of what we're working through. And then Rory said, you know, why don't we just ask God for a TV? I was still a little bit more, you know, prideful, I guess would be. And I looked at him and I said, God has done so much for, no, I am not going to ask God for a TV. That's just, you know what? Yeah, God could, but that's not what I'm going to do. That just doesn't, you know, that feels to me like materialism in my prideful, faith-driven life, you know. Well, this was when I was an intern and we were driving to Birmingham for me to work in the church over there. So we went to a Chinese restaurant for a grand opening after church with a bunch of people from the church. And JR, love him. He's the one who took they had these like scratch off tickets, and he took the tickets and he handed them out to everybody at the table. And I said, as I was scratching the ticket off, well, because people were scratching off and getting like a free drink, they were getting a free lunch, or, different things like that around the restaurant. And I'm scratching off going, well, I probably won't even get a meal because I never win anything. And lo and behold, I got the grand prize, which was a 64-inch plasma TV. This was the day after I said, I'm not going to ask for this. I could, but I'm not going to. And Rory looks at me in his smug little, and he says, well, I guess you didn't ask, but God heard you anyway. So my belief is that it was Rory's positive intention that brought this into our life. But it was a great lesson for me on the fact that, do I really believe that God cares about all things? Whether it's a material thing, whether it's an emotional thing, or any need in my life, or desire. I think we need to take more seriously some of the scriptures that we ignore. For instance, now to him who's able to do far more abundantly than we ever ask or think, according to the power at work within you. That's called participating in the own recovery. But it's that idea of realizing that I can have more than I ask or think. Do you believe that's true? Lisa. Oh, unmute yourself, please.
So I guess my biggest struggle with that isn't doubting that God can provide, and isn't necessarily worrying about discerning, okay, what should I ask God for? But quite frankly, it's about my own struggle with my worthiness. And you just said, you participate in it. And I know myself, deep down at times, I'm like, I haven't done my part. I don't really want to do my part, for whatever reasons. But I still want whatever, the goal or thing or objective is. And then I think, well, should I ask God for that? Is it selfishness now that's driving me? And so to play it safe, I just don't ask for anything. I obviously am very blessed. I'm not saying he hasn't given me things, but at the same time, how do you feel like you're reconciled with God to the place where you can approach with confidence, or, with that confident expectancy, with that hope that he's going to be hearing you?
Yeah. And now we're back to the conversation. The conversation we have with ourselves, and the conversation we have with God, and the conversations we have with others. I struggle. You and I have a very similar history in that I struggle with my worthiness. One of the hardest exercises I ever did, I see you, Rory, I'll be right there. One of the hardest exercises I ever did, there was this thing, and I've talked about it before, Humans Being More, love that program. I had to sit across from somebody and say, what was the exact words, Rory? Rory, help me out here. It was, I deserve, and then say what my dream was. I don't deserve anything. I'm a horrible, wretched, evil person. And I've struggled with that, what I call worm theology. Because that's, yes, okay. And this is, I'll give you how I've started to grow beyond that not worthy. The idea is, yes, compared to God, the amazingness, the awesomeness, the vastness of God, who God is, the energy, the quantum level explosion in my head of all of this. In comparison to that, yeah, I'm pretty insignificant. That, the purpose of that thought is not about worthiness. It's the purpose of that thought is humility in realizing there's something beyond myself. But we've twisted that into a dividing thought and made ourselves unworthy, instead of using that as a catalyst of there's something bigger than myself in this world. Rory, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I used to humanize God so much that I would sometimes think God responded to me the way that other humans did, and think, oh, I really only have like a limited number of prayers, and then I'm becoming needy and asking for too much, and my prayer really ought to be worth it, because if I want to pray for this, but there's people starving, there's injustice in the world, and really is that prayer, and then I realized, with God we have unlimited prayer, and really prayer is conversation with God, and sometimes if you're not willing to ask, you probably don't really want it that bad anyway. So I realize now that there's unlimited. I can't ever seem needy to God, and my smallest needs can be met by God, and it's not gonna I really love to get this cool drone or something, or a video game or something, is not going to cost a child somewhere starving to starve, because I used a prayer up. And so, there's unlimited prayer, and it really is just conversation with God. So I pray virtually about everything now. So.
Oh, so you pray without ceasing. Oh, another teaching. Stuart.
I want to piggyback on what Rory just said, because even though might not, it's a struggle sometimes. You have those needs, you have those wants, you have those things that you feel foolish to ask about. But in the grand scheme of things, he already knows your wants, your needs, your every desire. But he does want you to take them to him. I think that's the big thing, is that he wants the communication. And when we feel that it's too small, or that it's not worthy to, I want this, but I'm not going to take it to the Lord in prayer because, my gosh, that's such a insignificant little thing. We're really limiting his ability and his desire to communicate and be connected with us, because he already knows that you want that little itty bitty thing, and that you desire it. He just wants you to talk to him. And I think we forget that sometimes. And the other problem I have is just the lack of faith. I mean, I take things to the Lord all the time, and I just don't have the faith to envision them having been met, and knowing that they're already met and that they're waiting for me.
We already have everything that we need. We just haven't realized it yet. In James, it says, "But let him ask in faith without doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that they will receive anything. He's a double-minded, unstable in all his ways." The idea that my background used this as a condemning for people with lack of faith, but that's not what this is about. This is about, I believe, removing the doubt. And the thing of it is, I like what Stuart said. The universe, God, whatever, already knows. Our participation in the receiving is in the asking. It's in the putting out there of, yes, I want this. I deserve this. Oh, that's a dangerous thing to say because it sounds prideful. But it's moving beyond the I'm not worthy, I'm asking too much, and just being transparent. There's a verse in Psalms, let me see if I can find it real quick here, that I love. Psalms 51:6. But you, Lord, desire honesty from the heart, so you can teach me to be wise in my inmost being. That to me is a definition of faith. God already knows our heart. So all the difference is asking is removing the doubt. Asking is removing the I'm not worthy. Asking is saying, thank you. I know I already have this. Any other thoughts on this? Carrie, unmute yourself, please. Thanks.
Okay. It was this time last year, and I had written a letter to an email to the adoption agency that handled Nick's adoption. Maybe seeing if there can be communication. Left it in God's hands and just was moving on. In the process, praying for restoration of our family, but meaning other family members. I wasn't even including Nick in that. And one day in prayer, I was just like, thank you, Lord, thank you, Lord, thank you, Lord. And I wasn't sure what I was saying thank you for, but I was saying thank you. An hour later, I go on Instagram. I see Nick's message. Hi, you gave birth to me 18 years ago. My name is Nick. And I was like, what? Oh my God, it's my son, oh my God. And he heard me without me actually, I said, you know where I'm going with this. I said, thank you, Lord. I wasn't sure what for. The email, and come to find out that email never reached the people because they were closed. They're no longer in business. It was Nick himself that did it. Well, God, but I was so grateful that, and then I thought, oh my gosh, I have a son. I have one in heaven, one on earth. Oh my God. And it was just a beautiful thing. And Ask Mike, I kept pushing him. Oh my God, it's Nick. And it'll be a year in July. And yeah, and that was part of the restoration.
Trusting the process. You know, this can be about things that we're worrying about or things that we want in our lives. The process is the same. I loved Clemence's metaphor of watering. I know it was somebody else's, but it's now yours. Of standing in the yard, where you focus is where the hose is going to go. And so you're watering, you're either watering the weeds or you're going to be watering the plants, and then driving a car. And so to me, speaking, affirming with intention is that focus, which is watering the future of my life. There is only the present. I'm jumping back on a few things that she said that I wanted to really, really emphasize. There is only now. The past is gone and the future has not happened. We need to learn to live in the now. Most of our worry is about the past or the future. It is not about the now. Now, there are a few things. There is a now right now. There's a now of the civil unrest and the way things, the change that needs to occur in our society. To me, that would be a healthy focus of not worrying about it, but a focus of, okay, this is an issue. Let's put our focus on building a better future for our children. Somebody had said that they worry for the future generations. To me, that would be a positive focus of focusing on what we can do here right now to facilitate that change. But beyond that, it's also facilitating that change within my own life with the belief, moving beyond belief to expectancy and realizing that God or whatever your faith language is able to do far more than I can even imagine, ask, or think. Scotty, I see that hand. Go ahead.
Okay. What I've come to lately with the meditations and different things that I do is that what I'm asking for when I pray for something or for somebody or whatever the situation is, that there be peace involved, regardless of what the outcome is. And that is a really, really important thing for me to be learning, is that there be peace in all kinds of things. Peace within myself, you know, whether, you know, that you say that you've gotten rid of pride or whatever, it's still that you've come to a peace within yourself. And so that to me has become my word for praying for someone, is that there be peace regardless of what the outcome is.
I like that. And now my understanding of the word peace is not lack of conflict. It's not silence, but my understanding of the word peace is completeness, that all things are as they should be. Okay. I like that a lot. I see that we're almost up with an hour here, so I'm not going to go to the next point. We'll save that for next week. And I'm not going to tell you what it is so that you'll, be in a mystery for next week. Are there any other closing ideas, thoughts, ahas, something that you want to say or you feel you need to say or whatever? And don't contact me afterwards, please, with a text saying, oh, I wish I had said. I get that every once in a while now. I'm getting texts. Used to be when we were meeting at the church building, people would come up, oh, I was going to say, but I just didn't think it would fit. It's like, why didn't you say that? It would have been perfect. So if you have something that you want to share, please do it right now before we shut down. Anyone? Lisa. And go ahead and unmute yourself, Lisa.
So the scripture you read from James, I started having a little bit of an issue with the second part that said, if you don't have faith when you're asking, then it's devil-mindedness. I'm paraphrasing, but I thought, it's not literally what that means. I think it's more closed-minded or dark-minded. I don't think that it's condemning, like you said. It's not condemning you, saying that you're possessed by the devil. I just thought I wanted to make that point, that I really think that devil just simply means when we allow dark thoughts and doubt. So.
Okay, that's good. I like that. Anyone else? Closing ideas or thoughts? Clemence, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I just wanted to say that the book by Eckhart Tolle is The Power of Now, and it's a bestseller. It's very easy to find. So The Power of Now.
The Power of Now. I love the title, because that's the power of our lives is in the now. Anyone else? And Stuart, you're unmuted.
Just that I miss you all. This is fun, but it's not the same.
Soon. For those of who have been asking when we were going to open the church, because really Georgia has lifted, I guess, all of the restrictions. However, according to there's an article out there, one of the news stations had put out that Georgia still is on the upward. We have not reached the peak yet, and DeKalb County is the third county, or in the state of Georgia. We're in third place for that growth. And it's zip code 30084 and 83 are right there. So, and that's us. That's our area. So I'm personally not comfortable with it at this point. So we haven't opened the pub yet, and we won't be meeting at the church either, just because it is what it is. And there's more lessons to be learned in this situation. No matter how it unfolds, things will be as they should be. But we'll keep you posted as to what's going on with Just As You Are and our physical presence to each other. Anything else? Are we offline yet, Rory? Did you just shut down? Oh, go ahead, Rory.
No, I did not. But that's what I wanted to say too is I know this isn't the same for those of us that live nearby and we would come here on Sundays, but I can tell you I'm when we're all talking, if you see me keep looking over, it's because I'm monitoring Facebook Live, and there are people who don't live in the area any longer, who used to come to Just As You Are, who are joining on Facebook Live. We also have people who are somewhat in the area, but weren't able to attend for a long time or haven't attended for a long time that are coming back on. And there's also people that from, that I don't know who they are, but there's also people that are from Jeff's and my previous life, even in Florida, who are actually logging on now and participating with Facebook Live. So while this I know isn't necessarily the same as it was before, and perhaps we can continue to do it even while we're all here in person online, we are reaching a larger audience who I think is getting out of it what we get out of it. And so that's a very beautiful thing. And so I'm excited about seeing our Facebook Live family grow as well. So yeah, I mean, even if we do end up start meeting in person again, we do want to continue to do this Facebook Live.
And actually, if I could add to that, not just people on Zoom, but the people on Facebook Live, and even if, because Rory's been uploading these to YouTube as well, if you're watching this and you have a question or a topic that you're interested in, I would love to hear from you, because that's really something we're still kind of getting the rhythm on Zoom doing this live, is the idea of conversation. Because of the muting and the unmuting, it's not quite as smooth, but your voice counts. So if there's a question or something that you would like to hear, please send me a direct message. I'm Rev Jeff Carey on Facebook, REVJEFFCAREY. So.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
Hey, I don't know what happened to my picture, but in any case, before you go, I need to tell you something before we close this out.
Okay, well, let's wait until we sign off of Facebook then.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. May the Lord watch between me and thee,
between me.
while we're absent,
All we're absent.
one from the other.
One from the other.
Happy trails.
Happy trails to you.